I think that Dad has been mischaracterized over the years. None of those things are true. So it's nice for people to get a little chance to get to know him better.
Neil Armstrong's
journey to the moon did not begin in a rocket. It began in a small town in Ohio. From an early age, he was fascinated by airplanes. At just 6 years old, his father took him on his very first airplane ride in a Ford Transit. That moment changed his life forever. Instead of toys or games, Armstrong was drawn to anything that could fly. He built model airplanes, studied aviation books, and spent countless hours imagining himself soaring in the sky. By the age of 16, before he even had a driver's license, Armstrong earned his student pilot license. Friends and teachers noticed that he was quiet, disciplined, and unusually focused for his age. While other kids dreamed of sports or fame, Armstrong's eyes were always looking upward. This childhood passion would become the foundation for everything that followed. It shaped his determination, his technical skills, and his ability to stay calm under pressure. His family later recalled that he seemed destined for flight, as though his path to the stars was written long before NASA even existed. By the time he entered college to study aeronautical engineering, his destiny was already taking shape. Before he became an astronaut, Armstrong had to prove himself as one of the most skilled pilots in the world. After serving in the Korean War as a naval aviator, where he flew dangerous combat missions, he joined the ranks of test pilots at Edwards Air Force Base. This was one of the most dangerous jobs on Earth. Test pilots flew experimental aircraft that had never been pushed to their limits before. Many of his colleagues lost their lives in fiery crashes, but Armstrong was known for his calmness under extreme conditions. One of his most famous incidents came while testing the X-15 rocket plane, a craft capable of flying at the edge of space. During one flight, he overshot his landing zone and found himself heading straight into the desert. Any wrong move could have been fatal, but Armstrong's steady hands guided the plane back safely. These experiences shaped the man who would later handle near disasters on the moon. They taught him that panic was useless, and that survival depended on precision, patience, and courage. By the time NASA selected him as an astronaut, Armstrong had already proven that he could handle the impossible. When Armstrong returned from the moon, he was instantly one of the most famous people in the world. Crowds cheered his name, governments invited him to speak, and schools treated him like a living legend. Yet, Armstrong himself never seemed comfortable with the attention. Unlike other astronauts who embraced fame, he turned inward. He refused to use his name for money or political gain. Instead, he accepted a teaching position at the University of Cincinnati, where he taught aerospace engineering. Students often expected him to be larger than life, but in the classroom, he was quiet, modest, and sometimes shy. He wanted his students to learn from their own efforts, not from his fame. For the rest of his life, he lived quietly on a farm in Ohio, avoiding the spotlight. He gave very few interviews and rarely appeared in public. His decision puzzled many, but those who knew him said it was part of his character. He believed the moon landing was not about him, it was about humanity. He saw himself as just one piece of a much larger story. This humility became one of the most respected parts of his legacy, though he spoke rarely. When Armstrong did share his thoughts, they carried great weight. He believed strongly in the importance of exploration, not just for science, but for the future of humanity. In one of his few public speeches, he explained that pushing into the unknown was part of human nature, and that the risks were worth the rewards. He knew firsthand how dangerous space exploration could be, but he also knew that without risk, there could be no progress. He once said that looking back at Earth from the moon gave him a new perspective that our planet is small, fragile, and shared by all people. This perspective influenced the way many astronauts described their journeys. But Armstrong's words carried special meaning because he was the first to see Earth from that distance. He believed that space exploration was not about competition between nations, but about the survival and advancement of all humanity. His philosophy continues to inspire scientists, engineers, and dreamers around the world who believe that reaching for the stars is not just a dream, but a responsibility. More than a decade after his passing, Armstrong's legacy is stronger than ever. Statues, schools, airports, and museums have been named in his honor. His famous words are taught in classrooms across the globe, and his story continues to inspire new generations of explorers. But beyond the honors and celebrations, what people admire most is his humanity. He was not a man who chased fame or fortune. He did not see himself as a hero, even though the world did. He was a man who carried grief, who made mistakes, who lived quietly, and who still managed to inspire billions. The recent revelations from his family about the circumstances of his death have only deepened the world's respect for him. They remind us that even legends are human, and that their lives are not free of tragedy. Today, when we look at the moon, we do not just see a distant world, we see the place where Armstrong left his footprints. A reminder that human courage and determination can reach beyond imagination. His story will live on, not just as history, but as a symbol of what humanity can achieve when it dares to dream. Neil Armstrong's name will forever be remembered as the first human to step onto the surface of the moon. On July 20, 1969, the world held its breath as millions of people listened through radios and watched on black and white televisions. Then came his calm voice. "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." With those words, Armstrong became more than just an astronaut. He became a symbol of human courage and possibility. Yet, behind that iconic moment was a man who lived quietly, almost in secrecy. Unlike many heroes who embraced fame, Armstrong often turned away from the spotlight. He rarely gave interviews, avoided public appearances, and spent most of his life protecting his privacy. This silence created an air of mystery around him. People admired him deeply, but many also wondered what he kept hidden. Over the decades, rumors began to grow about the challenges he faced, the private struggles he endured, and even the strange circumstances surrounding his death. For years, his family protected his secrets, but more than a decade after his passing, they finally confirmed the truth, offering the world a more complete picture of the man behind the legend. Armstrong's famous moonwalk might have looked calm and steady to the world, but the preparation behind it was extremely tough. Becoming the first person to set foot on another world was not just about building powerful rockets or advanced spacecraft, it was also about shaping a person to survive in the harshest conditions imaginable. Once chosen for Apollo 11, Armstrong and his fellow astronauts faced years of training that pushed them beyond ordinary human limits. They were put through simulations that repeated disasters again and again until their instincts were automatic. Armstrong spent hours in zero-gravity machines, learning how to move in a place where up and down no longer existed. He trained with heavy spacesuits in deserts and volcanic areas, where the rough ground was meant to mimic the surface of the moon. He even practiced photography over and over, making sure he could capture scientific images with precision. Survival training was just as demanding. He and his crew were dropped in jungles, oceans, and deserts, forced to survive with minimal supplies, in case they landed off course. Every exercise left him more prepared, but also more burdened. The public only saw the triumph, but Armstrong carried the weight of that pressure for the rest of his life. His family would later admit that these trials changed him deeply, shaping his quiet and careful personality. The world remembers Armstrong's descent down the ladder. But what most people did not realize at the time was just how close Apollo 11 came to ending in disaster. As the lunar module separated from the command ship and began its descent, alarms started flashing across the control panel. Error codes appeared, signaling that the guidance computer was overloaded and might shut down. In Houston, Mission Control scrambled to decide whether to continue. The call was made to press on, but Armstrong knew the situation was critical. On top of this, he noticed that the planned landing site was filled with dangerous boulders and craters. With fuel running dangerously low, he made the bold decision to take manual control of the craft. His heart was racing, but his voice remained calm as he searched for a safe place to land. Every second mattered. If he delayed, they could run out of fuel and crash. Finally, with only seconds of fuel left, he spotted a clear area and guided the module down. The world heard his steady words, "The Eagle has landed." To viewers, it seemed calm and flawless, but in truth, Armstrong had just saved the mission by making one of the most nerve-wracking landings in history. These moments of danger left marks on him, though he rarely spoke of it. The stress and near disasters weighed on him for the rest of his life. After Apollo 11, Armstrong's public image was larger than life, but when reporters tried to dig deeper, they often found silence. Armstrong avoided the spotlight, turning down interviews and even refusing to sign autographs. This silence added fuel to rumors. One of the most persistent stories came from amateur radio operators, who claimed to have intercepted unusual transmissions during Apollo 11. According to these accounts, Armstrong had supposedly said phrases like, "They're here, they're watching us." Some believed this was a reference to UFOs or unexplained objects near the moon. NASA officially dismissed these claims, saying the astronauts only saw a piece of detached equipment from their spacecraft. Buzz Aldrin himself admitted that they saw something strange following them, though he never called it alien. Still, Armstrong never addressed these rumors directly. His unwillingness to talk only deepened the mystery. Some said his silence was proof that he had seen something he could not reveal. Others believed he simply valued his privacy and did not want to feed speculation. Whatever the truth, this part of Armstrong's story continues to fascinate people, with many convinced that not everything about the moon landing was shared with the public. For decades after Apollo 11, Armstrong lived a very quiet life. He taught engineering, avoided fame, and spent time with his family. But after his death in 2012, his widow, Carol Armstrong, made a discovery that surprised even historians. While cleaning and sorting through their belongings, she found a plain white bag tucked away in their home. Inside it were objects from Apollo 11 tools, equipment, and even a camera that had been on the lunar module. These items were supposed to have been returned to NASA after the mission, but Armstrong had quietly kept them. He never told anyone, not even his closest friends. Historians were shocked, not because the items were dangerous, but because Armstrong had always been known as extremely careful and ruleful. Why would he secretly keep these pieces of history? Some believed it was sentiment. He wanted to hold on to the objects that had kept him alive on the moon. Others wondered if these objects were tied to moments not recorded in the official history. Whatever the reason, this discovery added another layer of mystery to his character. It showed that even the most disciplined man of his time had private parts of his story that no one knew about. Behind his calm and private nature, Armstrong carried personal grief that few people knew. Before his historic space fleet, his young daughter Karen, whom he lovingly called Muffy, died from a brain tumor at the age of just 2. Her death left a permanent scar on his life. Those close to him believed this loss played a large role in shaping his quiet, humble character. Unlike many other astronauts who embraced fame, Armstrong pulled away from it. He turned down endorsement deals, avoided celebrity events, and focused instead on teaching and engineering. He once even described himself as a White Sox pocket protector, nerdy engineer, downplaying his place in history. To him, the moon landing was not just his achievement, it belonged to the thousands of engineers and scientists who made it possible. While the public admired his humility, it also fueled speculation. People wondered why he avoided attention so strongly. Some saw it as modesty, others as secrecy. In truth, it was probably both. Armstrong valued dignity and refused to turn the moon landing into a personal brand. Yet, this silence also created the space for rumors to grow around him. Even in death, questions about his life remained unanswered. Neil Armstrong passed away on August 25, 2012, after undergoing heart bypass surgery in Ohio. At the time, the official story was simple. He had died from complications after surgery, something not uncommon for someone his age. Tributes poured in from around the world, and he was remembered with honor. But inside his family, there was confusion and anger. The truth, as they later revealed, was more painful. After his surgery, Armstrong's condition was stable. Doctors were optimistic. But during recovery, a mistake was made while handling the wires and tubes connected to his heart. Fluids began to build up, putting dangerous pressure on the organ. The alarms went off, but the medical team responded too slowly. By the time they realized what was happening, it was too late. Armstrong's family later discovered these details and believed his death was not just a natural complication, but a preventable medical error. The hospital eventually paid the family a settlement of $6 million, but the story was kept quiet for years. Only more than a decade later did the truth come out. For the public, Armstrong's death had been presented as calm and dignified. For his family, it was a story of avoidable tragedy. Now that the truth is out, people see Neil Armstrong in a new light. His life was not only about courage and triumph, but also about silence, grief, and the hidden struggles he carried. The revelation about his death shows that even the greatest heroes are fragile, and even legends can be lost to human error. For some, this makes his story even more powerful, because it reminds us that behind the hero was a man, one who loved his family, carried deep sorrow, and lived with humility. Armstrong will always be remembered as the first man to walk on the moon, but his legacy now includes a reminder of his humanity. His family's decision to break the silence after 11 years ensures that history remembers not just the legend, but also the person behind it. Perhaps the greatest lesson his story leaves us with is that even the strongest among us carry hidden burdens, and even the most famous lives can end in ways that are painfully ordinary. In the end, Armstrong's life and death remind us that greatness is not about being untouchably, it is about facing impossible challenges, carrying hidden struggles, and still inspiring the world.